Hello. How are you? Today I'm continuing the process of remaking an old comic of mine from college. I uploaded the first part of this series in April, and as of right now, it is one of the most viewed videos on my channel, which is kind of insane to be honest. Seeing how well this video has done in comparison to some of my other videos has really motivated me to continue this series. Well, I did plan on remaking the entire comic already, and I'm really happy to see how much love the first video has gotten. Anyway, if you're here from the first video, welcome back to Chaos. If you're new here and are interested in what I have to say, make sure to like and subscribe. And strap your butts in, because here we go! For those of you who are new here, or who may have forgotten some things over the last few months, when I was in my second year of college, I wrote and drew a 10-page comic called Heliotrope as part of my final assignment for the semester. There were a lot of things wrong with it, and I mostly took up the task of remaking this comic to see the difference between then and now. It's been nearly 7 years since then, so, live, laugh, love. Cry in your tub, I guess. In my first video on this series, I covered the first 2 pages of the comic, where Emily and Anik meet while Emily is in the middle of painting. These next 2 pages take the reader outside Emily's apartment to the other 2 characters of this timeless classic, Gray and Theo. Both of them are part of an unnamed organization full of people with special abilities, and Theo in particular is tied to Emily in multiple ways. But that's a story for another time. As with last time, let's dissect both of these next 2 pages and assess their condition. Outside Emily's apartment, Gray stands at the corner of the road, talking to Theo over the phone. He's been sent out to Emily's apartment because, according to Theo, Emily is essential to his plan, and time is of the essence in swaying her to his side. Meanwhile, Emily and Anik continue to converse in Emily's apartment. Maybe I should just break this down bit by bit and explain how I fixed this for the remake like last time. The first shot on page 3 with Gray standing outside feels extremely lifeless. It's probably because he's the only person in that frame. To be fair, the scene is set at night, but that's still not much of an excuse. And that's not even the worst part of the page. Look at the way he's holding his phone! Oh my gosh, 19-year-old me, you had one job at- Wait, hold on. Look at Emily's neck! She's got a neck like frickin' Skippity Toilet! Again, I know I shouldn't be eviscerating my old art like this, but there's so many questionable decisions that could have been easily avoided if I'd put a bit more effort into it. Page 4 isn't much better. Where are the full body shots? Where are they? And all of this is excluding the bare-bones dialogue and all of the skeletalness that pervades throughout the entire comic. Emily and Anik's conversation, which takes up much of page 4, is just so vague. Like, thanks, I hate it. Fear not, folks, for this is why I've chosen to fix this train wreck. As with the entire comic, I've expanded and elaborated on each scene more than they originally were in the 2016 version, just to give some more insight into each of the 4 main characters and give a bit of background to them. Not outright info dumping, obviously, but giving some context clues as to who they are and the role they're playing in the story. You'll see the initial placements of the speech bubbles on page 3 right as I started the sketches, but as I got through the sketch phase, I realized that I needed to reconfigure some of the speech bubbles, so I saved it for after I was happy with where everything went. As a general rule, you should try to keep the camera angles as varied as possible. Don't keep things the same for too long, and this especially goes for close-range shots, because if you do this, then the composition just becomes stagnant. Of course, you also shouldn't have wildly different shots for the sake of it. They have to be arranged in a way that makes sense in regards to the scene, the mood, and the circumstances in the context of the story. I guess that's why the panel variation isn't quite as varied as it was in the first 2 pages, since I was setting the mood for the conversation between Emily and Anik there. I am kind of doing the same thing here with Theo and Gray, but my point still stands. Oh, speaking of setting up scenes. Again, I'm starting page 3 with an establishing shot to give the reader an idea of where we've gone and to show that this next scene is in a different location. As I said in my last video, there should be enough information as to where the new scene is taking place in these establishing shots. You don't have to go quite as crazy for future shots in that scene, but again, try to have something other than a blank box. Also, to get into a brief tangent while I'm on the sketching phase, which honestly also warrants its own video that I really want to make soon, but this really goes for all phases of drawing. Reference is your best friend. Source, just trust me, bro. If you don't use reference for the trickier poses that you know you want to incorporate, you're going to struggle. And then you're gonna cry, like I used to do. So treat yourself today. Find some photos that resemble your intended pose as closely as possible and save yourself the misery. If only I'd been smart enough to know this before I turned 21, but I don't have a time machine. Unfortunately. Because I wanted to expand on the dialogue and give it just a bit more meat, I've extended Gray and Theo's conversation about Emily to the entirety of the 4th page, where in the original comic, it's cut off by Emily and Anik's conversation. You'll be seeing that in the next part. I also wanted to show some more aspects of their characters and who they are and the way they talk and think, whereas in the original comic, it's, again, painfully skeletal. In the dialogue, I've also dropped a few more context clues as to why this situation is taking place, why Theo needs Emily specifically for his plans, and why Anik and Gray are along for the ride. And also, I knew I needed to unleash Theo's menace to society energy that I tried and failed to do in the original version. When crafting your dialogue, it shouldn't just be... I don't want to say linear, but it shouldn't strictly serve to move the story along. Think of the character's personality, the way they think, what kinds of things they would say that would reflect their personality. I think Theo has the strongest personality of the 4 main characters, probably because of how abrasive and quirky he is. He speaks his mind a lot, this one, and I tried to have it show in the updated dialogue. Once all the sketching was done, it was time for the line art. As I was in the process of doing the line art, however, I adjusted some of the panel compositions on page 4, because I felt like it was just too dull. It was giving sophomore year college vibes, which I would really like to leave in the past and never look back on. Then again, I'm remaking a comic from my sophomore year of college, so what's going on here? Anyhow, I made the angles just a bit more dynamic with the power of the rotation tool, so the shots aren't so head-on. I also tried it for the bottom panel, but in the end, I just left it. As one of my teachers in college said, creating panel compositions is kinda like solving a puzzle. You have to avoid so many things, but you also have to hit all of the points on your checklist. Is it interesting enough to be visually appealing to the reader? Are all of the important elements within the boundaries of the panel and not cut off by speech bubbles or unnecessary information? It's kinda like tap dancing. On a tight wire. 20 feet over a fire pit the size of the Atlantic Ocean. Or something like that. I was satisfied with the minor adjustments that I made, and I think the panels look just a bit more interesting. This way it's not so head-on and things just look spicy hot. When I do the line art 9 times out of 10, I use vector layers for my line art. This way, if I have to adjust something, it's leagues easier than it would be if I did the line art on a raster layer. If for whatever reason I have to adjust a line, I can do so without worrying about the line quality if I'm doing the line art on a vector layer. Because if you're drawing on a vector layer, you can adjust things to your heart's content while still being able to keep the line quality. Raster layers, on the other hand, not so much. Friendship with raster layers ended, now vector layers are my best friend. The line art phase is usually the quickest for me since it's more straightforward than the other phases. Although that depends on the circumstances. You're just going over your sketches and polishing the image up, unless you're cleaning up your sketches to use as the line art as I do sometimes. That's also valid. Once all of that was done, it was time to do the base colors, keeping with the greenish tone from pages 1 and 2. Something the original comic lacked was a single color that kept the entire color palette together. This is entirely personal preference, and something that has stuck with me since college now that I think about it. But another thing that got on my nerves with the original comic was the fact that the colors were a bit all over the place. Emily and Anik's scenes did have the pink-red theme going on, which was really only supplemented by the color of Emily's apartment walls, whereas Gray and Theo's scenes had this greenish tone to it. In retrospect, it kinda works since red and green are complementary colors, but it's still lacking. That, and there are also the other issues I mentioned in the first video. I put all of the base colors down before going in with the shading on separate layers from the base colors. No, we are not going to talk about the fact that I accidentally did some of the shading on the base layer because I forgot to lock the base layer. I ended up simplifying the shading process a bit, mimicking the experimentation from the first 2 pages as closely as possible. Now that I know what the shading style is going to look like, I chose to simplify the process because the last thing I want to do is make myself suffer again. Then again, I made myself suffer anyway by shading one panel at a time, at least in some instances. Then again, it's better for me to focus on one panel than to jump to another and forget some important details in the first panel later down the line. Because that has happened to me, and sometimes it still haunts my nightmares. Also, if you hear a change in the audio quality around this time specifically, it's because I had no idea I was recording with the laptop microphone instead of the one I usually use. But I am very close to the end of my script, and I don't want to make myself suffer. Both my laptop and Audacity have played me like a fiddle. But it's the day before uploading day as I record this audio, and I want to save myself from a mental breakdown, so we're gonna have to roll with it. Sorry. Anyway, for Theo's scenes, he's in his room with all the lights off, save for the light from his computer monitor, because he's just like that. Someone help this man. I did nothing too fancy, save for the dark blue overlay in the multiply blending mode, and the bright blue add and color dodge layers for the monitor light. It's funny because in school, I was told that if you were to print out a layer set to multiply, it would oversaturate the colors or something to that effect. If I were to print out this comic, I would definitely have done something different, but hey, I'm not printing this. At least, not anytime soon. Once that was done, it was time for the last bit. Adding in the speech bubbles, at least the ones I didn't already put in. Placing speech bubbles is in itself an Olympic sport. You can't put them too close to the panel borders, you especially can't have their edges touching the panel borders, and you can't have them blocking important information like characters and background details that you want the reader to focus on. I've become a little more lenient with how close I put my speech bubbles to the borders, but I always make it a point to never have them too close to or touching the borders. Which brings me back to the puzzle analogy. It has to work within the panel's boundaries, and it has to work with all of the panels immediately surrounding it. And the dialogue within the speech bubbles has to fit comfortably within the speech bubble, so the text can't be too close or too far away. I had the script fully written down prior to drawing the pages, but I will also sometimes make last-minute minor adjustments to the dialogue. If I feel like the original dialogue isn't flowing as well as I want it to, or if it's a bit too long, then that's when I go in to make the adjustments, but again, it's never anything major. So since we're coming up on the end of the video, what can we expect for the next 2 pages? Like I said, I moved Emily and Anik's conversation to the 5th and 6th pages, and given the state of the wonderful magnum opus, I gave their conversation a complete overhaul. You'll see what I mean soon, because the video is in the pipeline, and I have a lot of things that I want to talk about when it comes to the comparison between the old conversation and the new one. But nevertheless, that's going to do it for this video. If you like this and you want to see more art-related stuff from me, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I post new videos every other Monday, usually art-related, but sometimes I'll talk about other things too. And as it so happens, my next video is one that I am very excited for and covers a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a long time. Since before the creation of this channel, I think. So that's going to be interesting. If you want, you can also follow me on my social medias, which are all in the description. Though if you want to further support me, I have both a Ko-fi and an Etsy, which you can check out as well. And yeah, that's about everything. Thanks for watching.